I must state here to all those within hearing that these stories are born more of inspiration than scholarship. The characters seem to have a sense of urgency about them and a need to have their voices heard. The majority of them came to me in the waning hours of the night or the wee hours of the morning. I hope that you enjoy them. Please understand that I have no way of knowing if these are my actual ancestors speaking or just a series of glorified dreams. I don't know. I will have you know that I was compelled to write them. I have been driven by such a strong compulsion to express these thoughts that I simply had to compile them. Once again, I hope that you can appreciate them, and if they resemble anyone, my prayer is that you are not offended, but are rather inspired by the obvious strength and indomitable character displayed by each of them. My brothers and sisters, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, brave, no longer Negroes, no longer slaves, remembering the ancient African proverb, until the lion is able to tell his story, the hunter will always get the glory. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the historical adventures of Lightnin Gray, the Cakewalker. My name is Lightnin Gray, and I was born right yonder in Bladenburg in a stable over the Water Street at 12 noon on Tuesday, the 21st of January in the year our Lord 1800. I am 223 years old at this here talking. I remember being born. I remember the instant I swallowed my first breath. There's a lightning strike, and my mama and my papa, who were descended from the Dogon of Mali and keeper of scrolls at Timbuktu, laid this here ankh on my chest. I recalls how bright the day was, 'cause the sun was at its highest peak. Then my papa put his hand over the ankh and looked up to the heavens. Then seemed like the night come on in an instant, and it become dark at midnight. He looked up in them heavens, then he looked back at me, straight to the eye, and he say one word, read. There's another lightning strike that hit the very spot I was laying on. Then both of them, my papa and my mama, disappeared. I ain't never seen either one of them again in this life. Next clear memory I have was 218 years ago. I was 5. I recollect folk making all such a much over that science fella what was named Ben Banneker. The Negro folk was all proud 'cause it was learned that he's the one that saved the Washington district when that French fella named Lafont quit on the job. But the white folk all riled 'cause he had done writ a letter to President Jefferson about abolishing slavery. I remember that clear 'cause I seen him myself standing right yonder on the wharf. Folks say he's a black genius, they say. I remember them French and them English start scrapping over this here spot, right here on the river, when I was 12 years old. The war of 1812 it was. Seemed like everybody was mad with everybody. The Indians fighting with the French mad with the Brits, them redcoats mad with the colonies, and the colonies mad with everybody, seemed like. I recall that they's Algonquins and the Piscataway, everywhere, the Indians, they were. All up and down the Anacostia and the Potomac over here. But they's pretty near all gone now. Hardly a one left, not a one. I can recollect the Battle of Bladenburg. I was 14 years old. Seaman Charles Ball, I remember him. He's the first black man I ever seen in a Navy uniform. He told me that. That's where that saying, lost our shirts come from. 'Cause them redcoats come barreling up the wharf, come right through the shipyard, stormed down to the Washington district, and burnt up everything in their path. I personally seen President Madison on a big black stallion, prettiest horse I ever see. Besides maybe Bass Reeves horse, Silver. Well, anyway, Madison had all them blue coats around him, marching. Hell of a sight it was. I seen a lot of killing. A lot of killing. I remember days a fair amount of dueling in Bladenburg. I heard that folk would come here just for that. Come far and wide just for that. For the dueling. Blood Run, they call it. That fella would writ that Star Spangled Banner, that Scott Key fella, his son was killed over there on account of that foolishness, dueling. A lot of folk come here for them spa waters too. People from all over the world say God had blowed his breath in them waters. They come from all over, sick folk, for the healing. I remember that clear. In fact, I ain't never gonna forget that 'cause I was 16. The wall was just winding down and I was working the south end of the wharf, tying off some piling, when I heard a boom, sound like cannon fire. When I waked up, a bunch of folk, black folk and white, standing over me. There's a net mender named Caleb. His hand looked like they's hewn out of charcoal. But he pouring water over my forehead and they's rubbing my shoulders, my feet, my arms. A bolt of lightning had tore up half the pier. They say them spa waters would save me. That's when folks started calling me Lightnin for the first time. Till that day, I'd only been called Reed. After that day, I'd only be called Lightnin. Funny how things is. I harken back to 18 and 32. I suppose it ain't hard for me to recall the years 'cause they run right along with my age, you see, born in 1800 and all. But I knows it was 18 and 32 'cause that's the year I went to work on the railroad proper. We put down sleepers from here clear to Baltimore. It was hard work, hard working, cutting timber, laying ties, driving rail nails. But you know what my most happiest recollecting about that time? Was the Saturday night cakewalking. Man, we have a high time. Most young'uns today don't even know nothing about no cakewalking. They don't know that that's where the Lindy hopping, the jitterbug, they moonwalking, they pop locking, all that come from cakewalking. But they don't know them young'uns. Most time was misery though. Working sun up, sundown, misery, rain or shine, snow, sleet or hail. I remember blisters, backaches and bunions, 16 to 18 hours in the hot, blistering sun every day, just misery. But Lord of mercy, comes Saturday night, the fiddler be fiddling and the banjo player be plucking. We be drinking, mashing, and they be cakewalking the beat all get out. I remember we had a big shindig when we finished the line over to Washington. That was 1835. I recall that because they had been fighting the laws over there to get over there. See, before 1835, the line always stopped to Bladenburg. Wouldn't go all the way over there to the Washington district. But I tell you something that I recollect that most folk done forgot. There's a lot of people died whilst we stringing up Mr. Moss' telegraph. I think mayhap that I was electrocuted about maybe at least 5 times working on that. But it never bothered me near a bit. Just give me like a tingle. But I remember Pinchy Evans. Boy, whew, that boy grabbed a hold of a line and flopped all over the ground like a fresh caught trout. Burnt his arm all the way to his shoulder blade. Smelt like a roast of venison. Most all the colors would put up that telegraph, you know. Make no mistake, it was black folk what built the America's telegraph. It was only his white men what was overseeing, cause they's afeard to touch them line. But Samuel Morse come up with a code, you see, that allowed the train to talk from Bladenburg all the way to Baltimore. Most folk don't know they was right here. Right yonder, the first telegraph was raised. Another thing most folk don't know that it was a black man what invented that telegraph in the first place. Name was Lewis Howard Latimer. And I was actually to meet him some years later. But I'm getting ahead of myself in my own chronicles here. It come back to my thinking that Mr. Moss had a big gray dapper, pretty horse she was. I was saddling up for him one hot July morning in 43. All of a sudden the sun went dark and a storm come up so fast you couldn't turn. A bolt of lightning struck the hitching post and knocked me and the gray to the ground. Took the horse a spell before she got up, but I jumped up directly, looked to the Lord in the driving rain and thanked him. I think he heard me when I thanked him, because that was close to 180 years ago now. And my memorizing is better now than it was on that day he run electricity to me. Speaking of memorizing back, I tell you another something most folk don't know that ain't never spoke about much, cause white folk don't like hearing this part of their history, see. But there's a lot of good people what escaped slavery through here. When people be talking about the Underground Railroad, most of them don't even know that it run right through Bladenburg, Maryland. You ever hear of Henry Box Brown? That fellow which shipped himself to freedom in a box. You ever hear of him? Freight himself from over to Virginia in a wooden crate. Couldn't have been no more than 3 foot tall and 3 foot wide. He shipped from Richmond, Virginia, over to Port Tobacco, over in Marlboro, come in on a flatboat over to Water Street, where he put on a schooner over to Baltimore. That's the spring of 49. I remember them years, because they run right along with my age, you see. Now, there's one day I ain't never going to forget long as I live, because of the glory attached to it. The day of Jubilee. President Lincoln signed the paper, see. I recollect it was a fine spring day in April of 1862. I remember the clear cause little Hollis Harvey used to fetch things from over to Washington from time to time. Little fella. He come barreling down the main road on a big brown mare. It's strange because you ain't see much of colored men's riding no horses back in them days. He's standing straight up in the saddle shouting, "We's free, we's free." He done signed that emancipation, we's free. And boy, you talking about some cakewalking and mashing drinking that night. I remember we had a high time. Let me tell you another history fact. I worked on the rail when the first electric train come through here. First trial run was done right yonder on the Bladenburg track in the year our Lord 1867. I remember the year because they run right along, you see. I recollect they just start using them new skittish batteries things instead of steam, see. And the train speed reached almost to 20 miles an hour. I know they ain't kept no records on it, but there's a whole lot of fellas what died using them newfangled things. Because all you need to do was touch it wrong. I electrocuted maybe like 6, 7 times maybe, grabbing hold of them things. But the Lord let me live. And speaking of the Lord, mayhap one of my most proudest ponderings when we open up our own African Methodist Church, thanks to the Reverend Richard Allen. We all tired of having to sit up yonder to the gallery and hear a word of worship. White folks ain't want us to worship with them, so after a spell we start our own church. Dent Chapel it was, sit right yonder. And that about 123 years back. I think it was 1900. It was. I remember the year, cause they run right along with my age, you see. But Pastor Abraham Dent may have the preachingest man I ever hear. That man could preach a fire out of brimstone. I remember a lot of things about this here little village. How central important it was to the building of this whole country. I was thinking about how black people, the enslaved ones, and those that weren't never enslaved, how they built this whole thing. Not only with their labor, but mostly with their minds. I got thinking about all the inventors I met in my travels, like Louis Latimer mentioned, Granville T. Wood, Sarah Good. I remember Elijah McCoy. I met him, the real one, the real McCoy. I remember seeing Mr. Banneker and meeting Norbert Rillo, Sarah Boone, how they all created a whole host of needful things. I got thinking about what pressure do to people to turn them into what they is. The courage of some of them, like that there Charles Ball. But I remember like that there Will and Bass Reeves. All the freed ones and all the bonded, all the precious, precious souls. I got thinking about them. And my great grandson was going over yonder to that Howard University. The boy is smart. He went to two schools. Went to that Bowie Normal and over to Howard. He had to give a talk over there. And he asked me, given my age and all, what I say to the young'uns of the day if I had to speak a word to them. I had to set my mind to that for a spell, cause at first I thought it was above my bend. What I had to say to them, it was just like above my bend. But I got thinking about all the time. The Lord used me as a lightning rod, and that electricity run through me. I'm expecting I was electrocuted about maybe at least 7, 8 times. I know I worked real hard, at least maybe 100 of my years here. I lived through too many wars, the War 1812, the Indian War, the Civil War, the World War I, the World War II, Vietnam, along with all these new ones now, the war on poverty, war on drugs, war on terror, just too many wars and rumors of wars, just wars. The Lord let me travel all over this big country through all them damn wars. I traveled from here all the way past the Rocky Mountains. I remember all of the killing twixt the north and the south, all the Indians killed off, and all their misery on their trail of tears. I remember I was enslaved one while, then emancipation come and I was freed. I got thinking about this here ankh that my daddy gave to me on the first day I was born, and I can't never remember being without it. But what I remember best is the cakewalking. So I guess what I got to say to all of y'all who is of a mind to pay attention, anything I got to say this year, life is what you put your mind to. You can put it to the bad, you can put it to the good. You could do the choosing. So whenever I found troubles, or whenever trouble found me, I put my mind to the good Lord first, and then I put it to cakewalking.